In this episode, we're going to be painting up this 1/8 scale Ronin sculpted by Rescale miniatures. We're going to try a few new techniques with a sponge, we're going to do some air guitaring, we're going to use some contrast paints, and we're going to try out some liquid latex masking for the first time, and we are going to have a special announcement for the health and safety frog fans out there. I'm Dave, this is MS Paints, and this is another giant model that I have no room to put when it's done. So this is going to be my second big scale bigature, if you will. But this one caught my eye because of, well, firstly, the crazy dramatic pose going on, the size of it, and the lack of skin on show. Not because I'm a prude or anything, but it would be nice to take this one home and show it off to my mum and dad. Unfortunately, these massive pieces didn't get on too well with the printer. So we've got a knackered roof trim, which, thanks to my choice of framing, quick cuts, and unnecessary color grade, is going to vanish from this video as soon as I finish talking about it. First up, like in all of these videos, I'm going to sling a light value sketch on so that I know what's what and I know what I'm doing. That's mostly what they're there for, I think, but I have figured out that if you're using an airbrush to lay on thin coats of colour after this, the pre-shading step does actually pay dividends in the end result, I think. And in the case of this miniature, we're going to be relying on it when it comes to introducing some contrast paints later on, which is basically going to do half the work for us. Worth noting at this point that I am absolutely thinning everything in my airbrush with water. I don't bother with flow improver or dedicated paint thinner because I found with some paints those chemicals can cause the paint to congeal, and when paint congeals in your airbrush cup, you may as well have not fucking bothered getting out of bed this morning. For our undershadows on this Ronin lady's face, these are pinks and these are reds. We already have a nice grayscale gradient on here from the pre-shading, but we want those dark areas to have a little something about them. So pink to red, as opposed going grey to black, is kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for colours rather than absolutes. For these flesh tones, I don't actually remember specifically what I used, but I picked a mid-tone, a mid-flesh tone from the Too Thin Coats range to start with. Then I picked a super pale flesh tone and just added a drop into the airbrush with our existing colour to go a little step lighter. So despite me being a champion of airbrush use, I don't actually think when it comes to projects like this, I actually know what I'm doing with an airbrush. Like, I think I have my pressure set to maximum. The whole thing's gutted and cleaned out inside. Should be working like a whistle, but it's blowing like a whistle. Clean as a whistle? Yeah, clean as a whistle. But I'm getting a lot of speckling, a lot of spitting, and now that I've changed like one thing on my airbrush pump, it keeps refilling itself every 10 seconds, so I had to take it off the table because it was making the table vibrate. Yeah, I'm like 5 years deep into using an airbrush, and suddenly it feels like I don't know how to use an airbrush anymore, which is probably the rule of airbrushes, to be fair. To reach our final highlight tone on the forehead and cheekbones, we're adding a little bit of this white paint to that pale skin tone, and it is applied very sparingly. And as a nice little glaze, and to bring some just humanness and warmth back, we're going to get an insanely diluted yellow ink, and we are going to spray it from a wider distance than my lens will actually allow. Lips wise, it's a little bit of purple speed paint or a little bit of purple contrast paint. That's going to do the trick. I'm not going hard on lipstick or blusher or eyeshadow or anything like that, because our lady Shizuka is a badass bitch and she ain't got time to get a slap on before she goes out. Same deal with the eyebrows, nothing too fixed or deliberately applied, just some downward strokes to simulate the fact that her eyebrows are made of hair. We're going to tackle the eyes in a hot second, but Health and Safety Frog is tugging on my shirt to get his announcement out of the way, so be right back. Welcome, adventurer. Yeah, finally, our MS Paints Hector Health and Safety Frog miniatures line is available online for the first time. We've partnered up with our actual super best friends at Rogue's Den Hobbies to unleash the green tide upon the world. Featuring King Hector the Maris Piper, Dark Magician, the Riddle of Steel, Noble Knight, Big Babs, Yojimbo, Black Mage, Fats, and the Bold Ranger. And as a special promotion, we are offering all 9 models for the price of 8. But also sold separately if you don't want them taking over your house. Rogue's Den Hobbies offers free shipping on orders over £50 in the UK, and they also do ship internationally. So take home your lovingly handcrafted Hector action miniature today at www.roguesdenhobbies.com. Sound, back to the video. Right then, for the eyes. So we're going to paint them orbs in there with a mix of pale flesh and white, because pure white in the eyes is kind of scary. Then we take a brown and we find our pupil point, because there's no point in painting beyond the pupil point if you fuck that up. If she's got wangy eyes, then it's kind of worth maybe going back a few steps and getting that pupil point right. And at this point, you may have noticed that I haven't done anything especially wild in terms of deep contrast with this face. Mainly because, well, at this scale of model, for me at least, in my list and my drawer of excuses I can pull out, it pretty much lights itself at this size. Depending where I put this and where the light is coming from, it's going to have a big old directional shadows that are going to light it for me. I mentioned briefly how that light value sketch would come in for the, in a relationship with contrast paints, and now we're at that stage. Here we've got our light and shade, and we're just going to basically slap on some diluted skeleton horde paint, and while wicking off the excess, either from with a brush to a paper towel or just the paper towel directly, we can accent those recesses. We can extract it from the more raised areas so that we're carefully just making sure that we don't get any tide marks, essentially. So now I'm going to introduce you and myself to this sponge. I don't know why. I could do all this project with an airbrush, but then I wouldn't be trying anything new now, would I? So there we go. So we got our soft makeup brush, So we got our soft makeup sponge, our blender sponge, high quality from Yorkshire Trading Company. And we're just gonna have a little feel, guys. We're just gonna try and pepper on some highlights. In hindsight, yeah, I definitely could have made better use of like a smaller sponge. Smaller would be much better. I can see with time and practice that I will be able to find a use for this gimmick down the road. On big scale stuff like this, at least. I don't know about smaller stuff. We'll have to find out when we do. It does seem real useful at catching the edges on soft looking materials like these clothes. I imagine for terrain, this sponge is the absolute business. But I can't quite figure out whether this is going to destroy more models than it paints if we were painting Warhammer or someone else in a 28mm scale. She's got these nifty wooden little armor plates, and they could not be less of a faff if they tried, to be honest. You just bosh on a little bit of Cygor brown, and then highlighting up with the greys, more greys, and just put a little bit more grey on there for good measure. I don't know if it's me, but as I get older, I see wood and trees and wooden trees in shades of grey more than I do brown, I think. So, time to tackle the elephant in the room, the other 50% of this model, which is this cool smoking jacket that she's got on. And when deciding on a base colour, I decided not that one. And I settled on Amphora Red, if I'm pronouncing that right. Amphora Red, which is like a deep crimson Levino colour. But in not using that red rage colour, I did spy a very nice potential for a terracotta in there. I think that would be a nice terracotta, and I think it would suit these roof tiles down to a T. Now, I'm not an expert on ancient Japanese architecture, but I have witnessed with my own 2 eyes, my own 1.5 eyes, some terracotta coloured stuff out there. Even though all the oldest architecture I saw did have black roofs, I am just gonna go with orange anyway. I've justified it now. Sponge is back. Quite happy with the sponge highlighting on this. The sponge being as big as it is actually quite useful for catching raised areas and edges on semi-flat surfaces like this, if that makes sense. But for a little texture, I will go back to this knackered craft sponge on the end of an electronic component grabber, and I'm going to use that to dab on some chips and to just kind of wear away and distress it a little bit. For dramatic effect and to ultimately pull the eye to the centre of the statue, I've decided to layer on some contrast paints. Everything gets a pass of Skeleton Horde at first, and then we add another pass of Skeleton Horde, but we stop before we get to the top row of tiles. And then there's another pass, stopping at the layer of tiles below, and then so on, and so on, and so on. Right, squeaky bum time. This liquid latex mask is kind of made to replace masking tape in this context, I guess. Gimmick is that you can slap it on any areas where you don't want the paint to hit. So in this case, we've finished our inner robes, and we wanna focus on that big old smoking jacket, and we want to make a big fucking mess while we do it. And hopefully, this liquid latex mask can protect those whiter than whites. And while this takes about 45 minutes to dry, and it's safe to work with, I am going to get on with some busy work. Yeah, stuff like dry brushing the wooden roof, slapping some skeleton horde on the actual skeletons for a change, and then popping some highlights here and there. Treat myself. Right, here we go. Let's fucking ruin this thing then. So the smoking jacket, I decided to sponge on the highlights. Don't know why. I'm not qualified by any means when it comes to this kind of sponge use. I think my main bugbear is that the sponge is a little bit too large for what I'm trying to do with it. Can't get where I need it to get, and rather than chopping it up and making it smaller, which I should have done, I kind of just committed to the bit. With a growing look of disgust and panic on my face. I don't know why I did that. So I think my main takeaway from the exercise with the sponge is that sponge is good for some stuff where you need to know how to use a sponge properly, first off, for something else other than scrubbing dishes. I definitely could have done things better if I'd just gone back to the airbrush and used like a little tiny micro sponge. But it was worth a go. If you don't try it, you don't learn it. And if you don't learn it, now that the horror show is over, we can do this part, which is peeling off the liquid latex mask. The good news is that it worked pretty much perfectly. The bad news is that even though it worked, I've still got to peel. I've still got to peel all this off in very painful, very slow, very tortuous stages. And yeah, I've done it once. It was about 90% successful, so I am definitely now confident enough to do this again with the face. And yes, again, gloss varnish underneath for absolute idiot proofing. To tackle nice lady's hair, I'm spraying on some dark grey with a bit of blue in it. Then getting underneath and using a true black for them shadows. And then as a little way to bring the blacks and the greys closer, maybe some would argue too close, we're getting some black speed paint on there. Don't ask me why there's that much speed paint on my palette. That incident is between me and the speed paint, but it's safe to say this ain't the first time half a bottle of this shit has dumped itself into my palette. Again, mask comes off with a little bit of protest, but it does come off. And any areas where the black paint has managed to get through, we can get some alcohol and a Q-tip and just rub it off without any resistance. I'm speed running through these little detail bits, either by just putting on Skeleton Horde and hoping for the best, or just thumping weathering powder on there to make the parts I didn't actually paint look like I was intending something, at least, like there was an intention there. It's the end of the day. It's the end of the day, guys. A job done is a job done for me at this point. Yes, mate, had a nice time with this one. Can't really say I could have done much better for my second attempt at something like this and this size. It's turned out pretty decent. I could have taken way more care with absolutely every single part of this model, but ultimately it's not intended to be viewed in its various component parts. It's meant to be viewed as a whole. And as a whole, it happens to be 35 centimeters tall, and something that big usually kind of makes up and bypasses the detail skimming, I think. So, yes. At least that's what I think, and my own opinion takes precedent when it comes to my painting. So, that is that. Thank you to my wonderful Patreon community for supporting this channel, and if you'd like to be a part of the Ewok Village community, check the links down below or at the end of the video. Until next time, cheers! I'm out of here.